Hello, hi there. Been a little while since I've gotten to do a video with you, but today I'm cooking a 5-course French dinner for clients of mine, and I have a lot of things to make that I don't think I've shown you before, so I wanted to take the opportunity to do so. For dessert today, we are going to have white wine poached pears. I'm going to top them this evening with melted blue cheese and candied pecans, but they are also really good if you top them with ice cream or whipped cream, and super simple recipe that you can keep in the fridge a couple days in advance, even if you'd like to. So let's get into it. Things that you need today: a hard pear. Choose Anjou or Basque pears that can stand up to the boiling process or simmering process, because you want them to be able to absorb all the flavors that are in the broth that we're going to use to cook these. If the pears are already soft, they're just going to turn to mush. So make sure you have a good firm pear. You're going to need a little bit of sugar. We're going to need a wine for poaching. Honestly, a cheap white wine, or if you're making these red instead, a cheap white wine is the way to go. I mean, there are chefs out there that will tell you, your food's only going to be as good as the quality of wine that you cook with it. When you cook that wine, you ruin it anyway. Anything that was good that's in there is now cooked. So I don't spend money on my cooking wine. I'm using, I think this is an $8 or $9 bottle of Vino Verde. What is important, whether you're doing white or red, is that if it's a white wine, it has high acid. That's what's going to help infuse these pears. If it's a red wine, then it has high tannin. Again, that's going to break down some of the firmness and get into those pears and cause a great flavor. If either one happens to have some sugar already, so if you were to choose a Moscato, relatively affordable, really good acid level in that wine, already has sweetness, it just means you cut back on the sugar that you add, okay? So just a cheap bottle of white wine, I'm using Vino Verde. And then you're going to need whole cinnamon sticks, whole anise stars, those aren't they beautiful? And I'm gonna do a whole vanilla bean. I have the whole ingredients. If you don't have the whole ingredients, put the ground cinnamon, put the whole, the ground anise, or the vanilla extract, if that's what you have. Don't worry about it otherwise. But I have the whole one, so that's what I'm gonna use today. So really quick, first you're going to wanna peel your pears. And then you're going to want to cut them in half, and I use the melon baller just to take out any part of the core that's still remaining. Put those in a nice pot where they'll be able to be submerged. I'm going to use my bottle of white wine here. Cover those bad boys up. If you don't have a whole bottle of wine, maybe you only have half, or maybe I'm making 6 whole pears, so I have 12 halves in here. I need a lot more liquid than I would if I was just making 2, right? For me, you're not going to use a whole bottle of wine on 2 pears. Do about half a bottle of wine or 2 cups of wine, and then just supplement the rest to cover up the pears with water. That's perfectly fine. So I did a whole bottle of wine and 2 cups of water, but I have a very big pot and a lot of pears. Then we're going to throw our cinnamon sticks in whole, star anise in, I have 2, and then the vanilla bean. Ideally, I would have taken a knife and I would have split open this bean pot so that as it cooks, all the little bits of vanilla can leak out. My vanilla beans are too old though, and it is too hard. So I'm gonna go ahead and let it in here to boil. When it softens, I'll pull it out, I'll cut it open, make sure all those little parts of vanilla bean get into the broth. And then lastly, because my wine is not very sweet, I'm gonna add about a cup of sugar. If you were serving this with ice cream or with whipped cream, you could certainly cut back on the sugar in these, because then that's going to be the sweet component of your dish. But I'm serving mine with blue cheese. That's going to be savory. So I want to make sure I have a little bit in the pot. So I'm going to put these on the stove, and I'm going to simmer these on low, medium, until they're fork tender. So it's probably going to be about 25 minutes. And that's just going to depend on if you keep your pears whole or you cut them in half. I cut mine in half so the cooking process will go quicker. And obviously how hard your pears are to begin with. So last thing for you, what am I going to pair these with? If I was making red wine poached pears, I would pair these with port. But because I'm doing white wine and I had to stick with France, and port does not come from France, I'm going to do a Sauternes instead. So this is the wine pairing I'm offering tonight. It's called Léonce de Sidoreau. And this is Sauternes from the very south of Bordeaux. So we all think about red wines, big red wines, when we think about Bordeaux, but down there in the Sauternes regions, they produce the most delectable, not just Sauternes, but Barsac, Mambaziac, they all produce these amazing sweet wines, sweet dessert wines. So they're made from Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc. Typically white Bordeaux's, whenever they are made to be dry, there are a larger amount of Sauvignon Blanc and a smaller amount of Semillon. When they're made to be dessert wines, there are a larger amount of Semillon and a smaller amount of Sauvignon Blanc. What they do there is there's two rivers, the Garonne and the Dordogne, that merge and create an estuary where all of the vapors and mist from the merging rivers floats out into the vineyards, and that's where it becomes the Garonne River that runs out to the Atlantic Ocean. Sorry, sometimes I have to think. So anyway, where those two rivers meet, Garonne, Dordogne, it makes this mist that floats over the vineyards, and what that does is create these damp conditions that cause mold growth. So under a lot of circumstances, that could be a really bad thing. The mold would settle, the moisture would settle on the grapes, it would cause the mold to grow, it could rot the whole crop. But in Bordeaux, they have this unique microclimate where that mist will kick up at night and coat all of the vines and the grapes, and then during the day, the sun comes out and dries it up. So there's this unique start, stop process with how those grapes develop and how the mold develops. So instead of turning to a really bad kind of mold, which would be called gray rot, it instead turns to something really amazing. It's called, it's Botrytis sincera. It's referred to as noble rot. And what that mold does on the outside of the grapes is it dehydrates them from the inside out, sucks all the water content out, leaving all the juice and the sugars behind. And what you get is a really concentrated, super sweet, delectable wine. This is going to have lots of notes of honey and honeysuckle, citrus, marmalade, just really awesome, still acidic notes, but just with this great sweetness to them, this great ripeness to it, and it's going to make the perfect complement for these pears. As I said, I'm doing a savory pairing there, so when you have really sweet wines, it's nice to have something savory there. So I'm going to have the blue cheese and toasted pecans with it. But it is a perfect pairing with any type of wild game. When you think about things like rabbit and venison, you know, it's so nice to do a port wine reduction on those because it's that sweet fruitiness to complement the gaminess. Sauternes can serve the same function. It has the same profile to it, just not as much alcohol as when you're talking about a port. So something new to try. I hope maybe this holiday, as you're testing out some new recipes, this is one you get to include. And I'll make sure I post a picture of the finished product for you. Have a great day.